Welcome to a plate full of Brussels sprouts. Is that thing's on? And in this video, I'm going to show you how to change your FEP sheet for your 3D printer. From time to time, your printer is going to need the FEP sheet changed. The FEP sheet is the clear sheet that goes between your screen and the liquid that you keep in your vat. And over time, this sheet becomes damaged. And during your printer's life, you're going to need to change this part fairly often. This isn't a particularly difficult task to do, but I'm going to show you how I do it anyway. For this task, we're going to need a couple of things. A bunch of kitchen towel. Mostly this is going to be used to put down on your table surface. I keep a spare one so I can wipe up any resin that is left over. You need some gloves because resin is not good for your skin. And you need a damaged FEP sheet so you can change it. And since we're talking about changing FEP sheets, it might be extremely helpful if you actually have FEP sheets to change too. So if we look at the bottom of this FEP, we can see that there is some damage in the center here. This is due to me using mainly the center of my build plate, which is not the best idea. You should try to use as much of this space as possible. So if you're only printing one thing at a time and you constantly put it in the center, not only are you going to be damaging your FEP, but you might also be damaging your LCD by putting all the work through the center. So it's good to spread your prints out. But in this case, you can see that the FEP is damaged. This is one of the main reasons that people have errors in their prints. So if your printer's been printing really great for a while and suddenly has stopped printing very great and you're having many fails, this may be one of the main reasons for that. Also, FEP sheets are extremely cheap. So there is many things that are consumables on these 3D printers. And when it comes down to it, just change the FEP. It doesn't cost a lot and it's just worth your while and saves you a hell of a lot of hassles, especially if you're having any issues. Just change the FEP. So the best way to do this is to place your entire vat upside down so that your screws are obviously facing up because you need to get to them. So you can unscrew this and take it apart. What I tend to do is stick my Allen wrench into the corner here, so that I can lift up this plate at the bottom. And once I've got it up, carefully take it off. Make sure not to bend it or destroy it in any kind of way. And I'll put that aside for now. And carefully remove the old FEP sheet, trying not to get as much spillage of resin as possible. Sometimes little pieces of resin and bits of the build plate and things like that can be caught in the edges and the corners. This is why it's good to have that extra sheet of kitchen towel available, just so you can wipe this out and make sure this is nice and clean. Then you take your new FEP sheet. These generally tend to come with a protective film over the top. And as you can see, this is indicated by these pieces hanging off on the edge. And so with great difficulty, you've got to try to pull these two parts against each other. Eventually you'll get it open and take that off. And don't forget to take the other side off. And then try to place this as central as you possibly can. So it's a good idea to feel each side and make sure it feels relatively centered on the piece. That feels pretty good. Then we take this clamping part and we put this back over the top carefully again, trying not to move the sheet as we place this over the top. And gently press this into place. Not too hard because you want actually the work to be done when you start to screw it together. So you kind of just want to dimple it in place, but not too much. And then this is the difficult part, keeping this together, because once you've dimpled this, you don't want to be moving it much. You're going to take then a sharp knife. I use my scalpel and I'm going to poke one hole on this side and place in a screw. And I'm going to screw this screw just to the point where I'm holding this bracket to. So not tight, I'm just going to put it in so that it's taking the weight of my hand pushing down. And that screw is clamping it in. Now, the trick with getting a FEP tight and perfect is to do this in a rotating fashion. So if you do the top right, that means you've got to do the bottom left. So you can't actually see this, but just imagine you could see it. Oh, I'm doing this bottom left corner now. I just can't let go of this sheet because otherwise it's all going to be a big failure. Once you've got those two first screws in, it's a hell of a lot easier from here on out. So once those two are in, that's pretty much holding your sheet in for you. You still don't want to be messing with this too much. The next thing you want to do is the other two corners that are left over. So I want to push that down ever so slightly. Break a hole in it with the knife or something sharp and put that screw in to hold this bracket in place. Again, do not tighten these just yet. You just want to get these in place to hold it down just before it starts to crimp everything together. Now I can let go of the thing because I've got at least 3 points, and we want to poke a hole on this side now. So the way I see it is that these 4 screws are the most important screws. The outer edge is the parts that tend to pull the whole FEP to each other. However, there is 2 other screws that I think are extremely important to put in before you put any of the other screws in, and that will be these 2 center screws. So we'll do those next. I specifically don't tighten these screws too tight because, like I said, the corner screws are the most important for pulling the FEP tight. Now that we have those 6 screws in, we're going to place the next few screws into their places so that everything is ready for us to start tightening everything together. So I go around and I just poke a hole in the center of each of these screw places and then go through and place all the screws into their places. At this point, it doesn't really matter what order you put the screws in. You're just trying to get the screws in place. For now, just remember, don't tighten them all the way because they're not ready to put tension onto the FEP sheet yet. Right, now that we're at this point, it's time to start tensioning this entire thing. So as long as you don't put any pressure on the center, you want to make sure that the only thing you're touching right now is the outsides or these screws only. Do not put any pressure during this entire process on the center. And the best way to do this is whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So we're going to start with tightening this corner here. And we're going to do it just a little bit. We're not going to take it too far. A couple of turns in is all it's going to take. And then because we've done this corner, we need to go to the opposite corner and do the exact same amount of turns. Then we can move up to the top and then opposite corner. Same thing again. Now we do the exact same thing that we did previously by going through all the other screws and getting them to the same place that the corner screws are, starting with these center ones again. So we're one step lower down into this being in perfect position. We're now going to go to the corner ones again, and I'm going to crank these pretty much all the way tight. Starting with that corner, and again, like I said, always doing the exact opposite on the other side of the vat, making sure that whatever I do on one side, I do on the opposite side too. This helps keep things nice and equal throughout the entire FEP sheet. Again, we'll go to the center now, tighten this one up. You can do this incrementally slower as well if you want, but I've found that doing it in 2 to 3 layers of increment is usually good enough. You don't really have to spend too much time on doing this. This isn't really a big job at the end of the day, but you can make this out to be as much of a job as you want it to be. But ideally, this is one of the easiest ways I've found to do this, and I've never had any problems with doing it this way so far. In general, about every 2 to 3 months, I'll end up changing my FEP on my small frozen mini 4K, and about 3-4 months on my mighty 4K. However, I also find that depends on the FEP sheet you choose to put in it. Some FEP is better than others, and there is also a new FEP on the market called NFEP or NFEP or however the hell you want to call it, but apparently it's a lot stronger and better than the standard FEP sheets that you get at the moment. Once these have all been cranked down to nice and tight, you don't want them over tight because the last thing you want to do is strip your screws into this aluminium vat. We're now going to take an extremely sharp knife and we're going to cut the rest of the sheet that is hanging over off. Obviously, the last thing you want to do in this situation is poke a hole into this, because if you do, you're going to have a bad time. And while you're cutting like this, be careful not to slice the edge where the knife is facing towards the FEP, because if you do, again, bad time. And what you should have when that is done just like that, you can actually hear my voice echoing, because that thing is tight as a drum. That is so tight, it's ridiculous. And that's how you change the FEP sheet. And so, like I said, It's not too difficult to change the sheet of FEP in the bottom of your vat. If you ever need to do this, don't feel scared, just jump in and do it. With all of that said, I'd like to mention that we do have a Patreon, which does help support this channel and keep us making videos just like this and others that you see on the channel. If you would like to join the Patreon and become part of the coolest people on the entire internet, you will get access to things like Discord, and that's pretty much it. But also I'll be very appreciative of the support that you give the channel. And yes, we had one more new Patreon this week. Why do you guys keep coming with such difficult names? Make your Patreon name really easy, because it's actually quite difficult to say these names sometimes. Pierre Luc Dimon Tigny. It's getting worse. Every time I say a new name, it's getting worse. I'm so sorry, but that's just how it is. I'm from South Africa. We don't really know how to pronounce names. I don't think I can be using that excuse anymore. I'd like to say, if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to leave a like, and if you enjoyed it enough, perhaps give me a subscription, because after all, if you give me one more subscription, I will have one more subscriber, and this is extremely good for my social media ego. Thank you for watching the video, and as always, when we get to this part of the video, I've got only one thing left to tell you. Even though YouTube is taking it away from us, you can still click the dislike button and f*** off. One thing I do need to mention, if you do change your FEP sheet, the best practices after that is to re-level your printer. I will do a future video where I show you how I level my printer. For now, just do it the way that you know how. Or perhaps search on YouTube for other people who've said how to do it, because apparently I can't get to everything all at the same time.